her response was so volatile towards these products because for her, she was like, you're completely ruining my home, my environment. Like I've spent time in hospitals. I don't want my home to feel like a hospital as well. She didn't want it to be around being reminded that she's an older woman and that her needs have changed. She just wanted something that supported her but didn't scream disability. I feel like a target now because there's a big white rail outside that shows that I'm living here and that I've got.
Never thought about that before. Hello. Hi, Laura. How are you?
Hi, good, thank you. Thanks for having me. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. I'm Luca, once again, the founder and owner of the Living Care Company, and we like to speak to other service providers within the care sort of world. And if you would, just tell us a bit about yourself and your company, if you would, Laura.
Yeah, so I'm the founder and director of a company called Invisible Creations. And what we do is we design and manufacture dual purpose, attractive, stylish grab rails, basically. So they're born out of design products that move away from the clinical kind of negative stigma that you find associated to a lot of mobility aids. So we decided to design something that would just blend into the home seamlessly. And it wouldn't be this kind of obtrusive thing that someone has into the home that makes it feel like hospital. So we're very much around shifting the narrative on that kind of product design for mobility and disability.
Basically, we actually had a client the other day who was due to have the fitting put in for his mum. He lives with his mum, or I think his mum might live in with him. And they turned up to put them in, and he basically said, "No, you're going to ruin the house." I don't know quite what you've done yet, but probably I should put you in touch with him. So you must have had quite a lot of feedback from people basically saying, "Oh, these are absolutely awful. What's being offered to me?" But how did you find out how strongly people felt these things?
So one of the kind of main inspirations behind starting the business was actually my gran. So it's been a very personal mission for me in terms of designing better. We were looking at how do we help people live more independently and longer in their own homes. And obviously you turn to the people that you're closest to. And I was very close with my gran. And it was one of those things where I would spend a lot of time with her, but I wouldn't really take notice of how difficult it was for her to get around her home. And she lived in a bungalow, which should be designed for an older person, but she had a step to get in and out of the front door, the back door. She had a bathroom that wasn't very accessible. So it was difficult for her to get around that space. So when we were looking, we were like, oh, there's a lot of things out there. There's mobility aids, there's grab rails. And her response was volatile towards these products because for her, she was like, you're completely ruining my home, my environment. Like I've spent time in hospitals. I don't want my home to feel like a hospital as well. She was very proud. She was very stylish. So a lot of that was stripping away her dignity and her choice and her control. So that was a kind of huge wake-up call for me, is that why just because you're older, your needs change, you've got mobility issues or you're disabled, do you have such a narrow choice of the kind of products and services that are available to you? So then it became this personal mission of, right, we know she needs this support. We know that she's rejecting getting the stuff that's out there currently. What can we do that gives her something? So it was very much for her to begin with. And then we were looking at what is she already doing around the home? So she was grabbing on to things like radiators, door frames. She was grabbing on to towel rails. So then we worked with some occupational therapists to be like, can't we just combine a grab rail with some of these elements? Because then it doesn't necessarily look like a grab rail. She'll be really happy to have it in her home. And actually, I would have the same product in. And that was a lot of the gauge for her, that if it was good enough to be in my house, then she would want it in her house as well. Like she wanted to strip away that age thing. She didn't want it to be around being reminded that she's an older woman and that her needs have changed. She just wanted something that supported her but didn't scream disability.
First initial product that you kind of designed for her, was it just the one to begin with? Or?
So we looked at two key areas. So this was based on a lot of statistics that were out there currently on bathrooms are the place where the most slips and trips happen. And then also the kind of entry point to the house is one of the kind of most difficult places to manage. The outside was a really big one for my gran because she did actually end up getting two white plastic rails because she fell. She ended up in hospital and that was a requirement of her coming home, kicking and screaming, but she had to have them to come home. But for her, that made her feel really vulnerable because she said, I feel like a target now because there's a big white rail outside that shows that I'm living here and that I've got.
Never thought about that before.
Yeah, and it's a really big thing. So when we looked into it a little bit more, it's actually 43% of all doorstep crime is linked back to someone with a grab rail, a key safe, or RAM. So it's actually a real big safety issue in terms of the person living in that home getting targeted. So that was a big thing for us. We wanted to design something that didn't make someone feel vulnerable on both elements in terms of that clinical looking product, but also that they feel that someone could come and take advantage of them. So that we designed a plant pot holder basically. So it just sits on the outside of the home and looks like an average kind of thing that you would put plants on, flowers. People have used them for all sorts now. We've had little statues and candles. We've had people install them inside. So it's great to see what people have done to personalize these kind of products. So that was the first one that we did.
Were you a designer, Laura, before that? Or did you study design? Or what sort of job were you doing? Or what industry were you working at that point in time?
I worked in housing, in social housing, and I did marketing, PR, comms, so not design at all. So that was a complete change for me. So we actually got an external designer in to help with the design of the products and everything else. But we came up with those dual purpose ideas by looking at what people were already grabbing onto. So yeah, it's been a big journey for me because now I know all sorts of stuff about design that I never knew before, and it's been really great. And I think the thing that we've kept alive throughout the whole thing, so we started with my gran and a bunch of others where we were looking at their needs and what they wanted and how they used their homes, but we've kept that the whole way through the business. So every time we design new products, we go to groups of disabled people or older people and we work with them in terms of actually what would help, what are you missing, what do you like the style of this, would this blend in with your home, do you like this color? So everything is very user-led. We always look at this kind of like inclusive design element to make sure that we're not just saying, oh yeah, we're going to design that because we think it looks good. Everything's got a purpose behind it and that kind of people-centered approach, really.
What is your highest volume product, the one that you make the most of? And
I think so. The plant pot holder one is like the showstopper. That's the one that everyone loves, gets everyone attention. The ones that people probably purchase the most and find the most practical. So we've got a toilet roll holder grab rail, and a lot of falls happen in that transition period from getting on and off the toilet. So that practical element is fantastic. And I think the comments we've got on that as well is that it's quite a universal product. So even though it's great for an older person or a disabled person, we've also had people say when I'm training my toddler to get on and off the toilet, they've got something to jump off with. They can hold on to that. So they were saying that actually from a universal point of view, it's practical for the whole family. It's not just about having a specific need. And we've also got a corner shower shelf. So a lot of people were putting kind of products on the floor, bending over, slipping. So we've just got a little corner shelf that had a grab rail element incorporated into it. So when they're in that kind of showering area, there's just something to hold on to steady. Or if you did slip, you can use that. And the thing is, in terms of how many people slip in the shower, you don't have to have a mobility need or a disability. I've slipped in the shower millions of times. It is a slippery surface. So having something in there actually that can help is really useful.
did you ever have any problems throughout the course of the design and implementation of this where people weren't able to recognize that it was something that they could grab because it was so convincing looking, or was that ever a problem?
Not so much, I guess, because we are quite open about the fact that it is a dual purpose product. So whenever we're selling or promoting, we're always talking about the fact that it's got that dual purpose element within it. So we do quite a lot of that in the promotions. I think it's like a double-edged sword with it because we don't want people to necessarily recognize that it's a grab rail, but we also want people to use it as one. But I think what we did find along the way is that people will grab onto anything if they slip. So actually, if they don't know that's what it's for and they still grab onto it, then we've got that kind of extra security that it will take their weight, it won't rip off the wall. Because the amount of, I end up staying a lot of Premier Inns and traveling with work, the amount of towel rails I've seen hanging off the wall in these hotels is huge. And again, yeah, people are using them to get over the bath threshold. So it's they placed them there specifically as a useful thing to be close to the shower to get your towel off, but actually people are using them as that. So again, it's people are going to use what's near them. So why not just make it more sturdy and robust?
So really, truly, obviously the idea came up to help people with significant mobility problems like your grand, but then you've learned that the product is pretty good for other people as well.
Yeah. And I think that's the brilliant element of it, is that people don't want to be stigmatized by something or kind of made to feel like they are vulnerable or that they're not capable of doing things that they used to be able to do, or that they are marginalized in some way by saying you're not good enough to have a nice, stylish, everyday product. You've got to have this very clinical looking thing. So actually by making it more universal and by making it something that's an everyday object that you have in your home, it's just better designed for everyone, really.
And how would you decide what sort of products to add to your range? Are you constantly talking to clients and getting feedback from them?
Yeah, so we work with a lot of housing associations, so we work quite a lot with their residents in terms of feeding into kind of what we would be designing next. And we've also been part of a couple of projects through like Innovate UK. So we worked with the Royal College Bar, their Design Age Institute recently. And through that, we worked with a loads of user groups and we were looking at the garden. So we kept getting asked about other elements of the garden in terms of being able to access it, because we had the plant pot holder rail that got you outside just the door, but then people were saying actually the benefit to my health and well-being of being able to get around my old garden is huge, but I can only get out onto that first little bit. I can't do anything when I'm out there. So we recognized that there was a need for this. Then we went out and observed kind of people's behaviors in the garden, and we saw people hanging onto washing lines to get from one side of the garden to the other, fences, pots, little bird baths, and all sorts of things that were just wobbling and really dangerous. So we recognized that if people are going to these lengths to still use this space, we need to come up with a design that actually can help support them, and that promote that mobility in the garden, but also prevent a fall if that does occur. So that's what we've been working on the last probably 6 to 8 months. And we'll have a new garden range coming out this summer. So that's super exciting for us that we can expand the offer, not just inside the home, but outside as well.
And how will that look? Will that be discrete grab stations spaced out to a
Yeah,
certain
so we've got a
space,
few
depending on
different
the client?
designs. We've got a path light, which is just what you would see normally. You have those kind of tall path lights, but we've just rounded it off into two kind of rails with the light in the middle. And then we've got like a big planter that's incorporated a rail into the design. But again, it just looks like it's an average kind of planter that you'd have in the garden. And then we've got some wall planters that you and have a rail around the outside that you can strategically place across kind of the walls of houses down the side. So we've got 3 that we've come up with initially, but I think we had about 100 designs that didn't make it through to that stage, but we're going to go back to and start to look for next year, just because it takes quite a long time to do the design process, the testing, because everything that we do goes through thorough testing, and we also do it against the like British standards for grab rails. So we do the testing against that, but we actually go over and above the weight limits and everything like that because we want it to be a more quality product than what currently exists.
So you get each product supplied by British Standards Office.
Yeah, so we do it against their testing, yeah.
Would you be the only business having a design-led, an aesthetic-led design of mobility aids, do you think? Or are there other ones?
In terms of other businesses that exist similar to us,
Yes.
so there's no one else really doing, so nicer looking grab rails exist. So you could get like a chrome straight rail, or sometimes you can get it in like a matte black finish or a grey finish, but it still looks exactly like a grab rail. So that's what we were trying to move away from, because no one else was changing the look of it and actually making it so that it was in disguise, so that we haven't really got any direct competitors. There has been a couple of designs copied along the way. So there's another version of a toilet roll holder that exists. There's another version of a shelf, I think. And it's flattery and it's great because we'd rather have more people having access to this kind of design. We want to be pushing the boundaries on it. And I'd love to get to a point where I never see a white plastic grab rail ever again in my entire life. But whether that'll happen or not, I don't know. But I think generationally it's shifting, and we expect more out of the services and the products that we have access to. So I think it's only going to keep pushing the boundaries on what we expect for that kind of offer. So I'm hoping that maybe one day we can get rid of that, but it's a big mission.
What are your plans for the future of Invisible Creations? As you mentioned, hotels could be really in need of your sort of product.
Yeah, so I think we're going to continue with designing. So we started with the bathroom, we've done a bit of outdoor, we've got a couple of other products for elsewhere in the home, but we want it to be like a full holistic solution so that the full home is accessible in the same way but stays stylish. So the plan will be to keep designing and have a whole solution, but also looking at other markets. So we were very much based in the social housing market when we first came along. We've started doing more kind of retail, direct to consumer only very recently, only in the last kind of 6 months, and we're doing more of that this year. But definitely the plan will be to look at other areas like that, because I've become obsessed with every bathroom I go in, every public bathroom, every hotel, looking at what the disability offer is in there. And some of it is just so depressing. And it's, especially if we've worked a little bit with people looking at like holiday homes, Airbnbs, cottages. And if you're going away and you want somewhere that's got wheelchair access or it's got an accessible bathroom, and then you're in this really nice place and then they stick all of that in the bathroom and they haven't really thought about that, it's not really feeling like you're on that holiday. You haven't got that break away from the kind of clinical stuff that you might have elsewhere. So I think that there's a big market there as well for designing better. So we've got quite big ambitions in terms of what we want to do, but it'll all be in a bit of a staged approach, because ultimately we just want to make sure that we're giving good quality and that we're making a difference to people's lives. So just however we can do that best, really.
Amazing, Laura. And as an individual, if you were interested in finding your products and looking at where would a client see?
So
your
we
product?
have our products on our own website, on the Invisible Creations website. And we've also just got them on B&Q now. So it's only online at the minute, but you can get them from B&Q. But we're working on getting them in some stores as well. So we are available online.
Is that invisiblecreations.co.uk? Is it?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic meeting you, Laura. Really appreciate you taking the time to tell us what you're doing. Thanks very much, and we will catch you later.
Thank you.